How does an ordinary day turn into an unforgettable tragedy? How can something as mundane as a social media live stream morph into a horrifying moment etched in the memories of thousands? This is the story of Asia Alice Poole, a vibrant young mother with dreams as big as her love for her daughter, who was tragically caught in the web of a conflict fueled by social media and unresolved personal tensions. On a warm August evening, Asia returned home like any other day, perhaps thinking about her daughter's future or what they might have for dinner. Meanwhile, across the digital space, an audience of Facebook users unknowingly tuned in to a live stream, expecting casual updates or mundane moments. But what they witnessed was far from ordinary. It was a sequence of events so shocking, so devastating that it would leave an entire community in grief and demand that we rethink the way we navigate online interactions. Asia's story isn't just about one person. It's about the ripple effects of personal disputes, the dangerous role of social media in amplifying conflicts, and the systemic failures that leave communities vulnerable. It's about a mother who worked tirelessly to create a better life for her child, only to have her life stolen in a flash of senseless violence. Today, we piece together the story of Asia Alice Poole, her life, her dreams, and the tragic events that unfolded on that fateful night. We'll explore how a personal disagreement escalated into public chaos, how an entire community has been impacted, and the lessons we must take to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. This story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. In today's digital age, how many arguments spill over from online platforms into the real world, with devastating consequences? How do personal disputes gain an audience of thousands, becoming a theatre for chaos and destruction? And more importantly, what can be done to stop it? Asia's story is a mirror reflecting the cracks in our society, cracks in community safety, the unchecked power of social media, and the way we as bystanders consume and react to conflict. It's a story of loss, but also a call to action, a plea for awareness, and an opportunity for us all to do better. As we unravel the events leading to Asia's final moments, let us not forget the humanity behind the headlines. Asia wasn't just a name on the news, she was a mother, a daughter, and a dreamer. This is her story. Social media has become a space where arguments escalate and conflicts gain dangerous momentum. Do you think platforms should bear more responsibility for these outcomes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. To understand the tragedy of Asia Alice Poole's story, we first have to understand the woman she was, the mother, the daughter, the friend. Asia was more than a statistic. She was a beacon of hope and love for her young daughter. At just 21 years old, she had already endured more loss and hardship than many face in a lifetime. Yet, through it all, she found joy in the small things, like her daughter's laughter, or the way the sun hit their little apartment just right in the mornings. And Asia's life revolved around her daughter. Every decision she made, every sacrifice, was driven by her desire to create a better life for her child. Recently, Asia had celebrated a milestone that parents everywhere cherish: her daughter's first day of pre-kindergarten. She shared the moment proudly on social media, photos of her little girl grinning with a colorful backpack slung over her tiny shoulders. The pride in Asia's words was palpable, and her joy was contagious. But behind the joyful photos and heartfelt captions, Asia carried a heavy burden. Just weeks before her death, tragedy struck her family when the father of her child passed away unexpectedly. In the face of this immense loss, Asia didn't retreat or crumble. Instead, she became a pillar of strength for her daughter, navigating her own grief while ensuring that her child felt safe, loved, and supported. It was a role she embraced wholeheartedly, even as the weight of single parenthood grew heavier. Asia was the kind of person who found strength in the face of adversity. After her partner's death, she focused even harder on her dreams for her daughter. Friends recall how she would save every extra dollar, hoping to one day move to a safer neighborhood and build a brighter future for her little girl. She even started a small savings account for her daughter's education, a symbol of the unwavering belief she had in the power of opportunity. Despite her challenges, Asia maintained an infectious optimism. Those closest to her describe her as a hands-on mother, deeply involved in her daughter's life. From morning drop-offs to evening story times, Asia made sure her child knew she was loved. She dreamed of watching her daughter grow up, graduate, and achieve things that she herself hadn't had the chance to pursue. To Asia, her daughter wasn't just her responsibility, she was her greatest joy, her purpose, and her reason to keep moving forward. Her love extended beyond her daughter. Asia was a friend and neighbor who brought light to those around her. She had a warm smile that could lift anyone's spirits, and she never hesitated to lend a helping hand. Whether it was babysitting for a friend or sharing advice with a fellow young mum, Asia gave what she could, even when she had little to spare. But even as Asia worked tirelessly to create a loving home, the world around her was not always kind. The challenges of single motherhood, financial stress, and the weight of grief were compounded by the environment she lived in, a community with safety concerns and a history of violence. Yet Asia's spirit remained unbroken. She held on to her dreams, her daughter, and her determination to keep moving forward. In her final days, Asia's resilience was as strong as ever. She smiled through her struggles, made plans for the future, and focused on what mattered most: her daughter. It's this resilience, this love, that makes her story so much more than a tragedy. It's a reminder of the strength it takes to be a parent, and the sacrifices so many make to give their children a chance at something better. Asia's story is one of love and perseverance in the face of hardship. What inspires you most about parents who overcome challenges for their children? Share a story or a message of encouragement in the comments below. Let's honor Asia's legacy by celebrating the strength of parents everywhere. Monarch Ridge Apartments, located in Birmingham's Gallant Drive neighborhood, was where Asia Alice Poole and her daughter called home. For Asia, it represented a stepping stone, an opportunity to give her child a stable environment while she worked toward a brighter future. But for many of the residents, Monarch Ridge was a place weighed down by safety concerns and unfulfilled promises. The complex was meant to be a community, but years of neglect had left it vulnerable. Broken security doors were propped open with bricks, disconnected surveillance cameras sat as empty reminders of what could have been, and dim lighting in the parking lots created an air of unease. These weren't just inconveniences. They were risks that families like Asia's had to navigate every single day. Residents of Monarch Ridge had long voiced their concerns. Letters were sent to property management. Complaints were made to city officials, yet little was done to address the issues. Security cameras, promised as part of a city-wide initiative to connect surveillance to Birmingham's real-time crime center, remained unconnected. Residents described how crime had become normalized, with disputes often escalating into violence. Asia, like so many others in the community, did her best to shield her daughter from these realities. Inside their apartment, she created a haven of love and learning. Brightly colored walls and educational posters filled their space. Her daughter's laughter echoed through the rooms, and despite the challenges outside, Asia worked to make her home feel safe and nurturing. But the walls of her apartment could only do so much to protect her. For every moment of peace inside, there were reminders of the dangers just beyond the door. In the months leading up to Asia's death, Monarch Ridge had seen a series of violent incidents. Police were called to the complex regularly, sometimes for minor altercations, but other times for weapons disturbances. Unsafe neighborhoods like Monarch Ridge impact families in profound ways. How do you think communities can work together to create safer spaces? And if you lived here, what would you demand from leaders to protect your family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The chain of events that would ultimately lead to Asia Elise Poole's death began not in the parking lot of Monarch Ridge Apartments, but on social media, a space where private arguments often spill into the public domain. At the heart of the conflict was a personal dispute between Asia and 19-year-old Jania Hendricks. The two women were connected by an unnamed man whose involvement fueled the tensions between them. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a modern-day battleground where social media amplified every word, every gesture. In today's world, arguments that might have once remained private are often played out on a global stage, with audiences ready to comment, share, and sometimes even escalate the drama. The posts were vague but loaded with tension, and they didn't go unnoticed. Friends, acquaintances, and even strangers began weighing in, fueling the animosity. Cryptic messages became a breeding ground for speculation, with mutual friends caught in the middle attempting and failing to mediate. As days turned into weeks, the hostility only grew. What began as a personal issue between two women quickly became a public spectacle. Social media didn't just reflect the conflict, it acted as a catalyst. Comments and reactions from mutual friends and even strangers fueled the fire, encouraging both sides to stand their ground. In a world where likes and shares often feel like validation, the pressure to win a public argument can become overwhelming. For Asia, this wasn't just a disagreement anymore. It was a storm brewing, one she couldn't fully escape. The unnamed man at the center of the dispute inadvertently became a trigger for the animosity. His connections to both women created a situation that was both personal and emotionally charged. As social media posts continued, the dispute spiraled into something far more dangerous, dragging in others who saw an opportunity to escalate the situation further. But even as Asia worked tirelessly to create a loving home, the world around her was not always kind. The challenges of single motherhood, financial stress, and the weight of grief were compounded by the environment she lived in, a community with safety concerns and a history of violence. Yet Asia's spirit remained unbroken. She held on to her dreams, her daughter, and her determination to keep moving forward. The growing animosity between Asia and Jania reflected a broader reality: how social media can transform disagreements into dangerous public spectacles. For many, the conflict became entertainment, a live drama unfolding in real time, with no thought for the real-life consequences. By the time August 20th arrived, the situation was a powder keg waiting to explode. Cryptic posts turned into outright threats. Social media chatter hinted at something brewing, and witnesses reported seeing unfamiliar cars and faces around Monarch Ridge in the days leading up to that night. It wasn't just an argument anymore. It was a stage set for confrontation. What makes this story so chilling is the way social media, a tool meant to connect us, became a weapon to escalate conflict. The pressure to respond, to defend, to win an argument in front of an audience turned a personal disagreement into a public war. And tragically, the consequences would prove fatal. Have you ever witnessed an online argument that spiraled out of control? What could have been done to de-escalate the tension before it turned dangerous? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and let's start a conversation about how we can prevent tragedies like this. August 20th, 2024 began like any other summer evening for Asia Elise Poole. At 6:45 p.m., she returned to her usual parking spot at Monarch Ridge Apartments after picking up dinner. She stepped out of her car, unaware of the gathering tension around her. Small groups were forming in the parking lot, their conversations casual at first, but with an undercurrent of unease. For most residents, it seemed like another ordinary night, until it wasn't, says Lulakina. By 7 p.m., a Facebook Live video began streaming, capturing what initially appeared to be a mundane scene. Viewers tuned in, their screens filled with small clusters of people talking in low voices, cars parked haphazardly, and children playing nearby. But beneath the surface, tension was brewing. At 7:15 p.m., Jania Hendricks arrived with a group of people. The tension that had simmered for weeks finally boiled over. A heated verbal confrontation broke out between Asia and Jania, drawing the attention of bystanders and the growing audience on Facebook Live. Comments on the live stream ranged from casual observations to warnings. "This is about to get serious," one viewer wrote. Another chimed in, "Someone better stop this before it gets out of hand." At 7:30 p.m., the fight reached its breaking point. Asia, exhausted and shaken, tried to walk away. Witnesses described her reaching for her car keys, her best friend urging her to leave. But before she could escape, multiple armed individuals emerged from the shadows, their faces masked, their weapons modified for rapid fire. What happened next was chaos, unlike anything Monarch Ridge Apartments had ever seen. Over 168 rounds were fired in just minutes. Witnesses described the scene as something out of a nightmare. Bullets ricocheting, people diving for cover, and screams piercing the air. Aisha's best friend, in a heroic attempt to save her, was struck in the leg while pulling Aisha towards safety. But for Aisha, it was too late. She was hit by gunfire and collapsed near her car. By the time first responders arrived, Aisha Alice Poole had succumbed to her injuries. She was pronounced dead at 7:45 p.m., leaving behind a daughter who had already lost so much. The violence didn't stop with Aisha's death. In the chaos, Jania Hendricks fled the scene in Asia's car, adding vehicle theft to the night's string of devastating events. Her escape would later provide investigators with crucial evidence, but at that moment it symbolized the senselessness of the night's tragedy. What unfolded that night wasn't just a crime, it was a reflection of a deeper issue. The combination of personal tensions, social media amplification, and systemic failures created a perfect storm that ended with a young mother's life cut short. Asia's story didn't just end at 7:45 p.m. It began a ripple effect that would leave an entire community grappling with questions, grief, and a desperate need for change. What would you have done if you were a witness that night? Do bystanders have a responsibility to intervene in escalating conflicts? And if so, how? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a conversation about how tragedies like this can be prevented. The shockwaves of Asia Alice Poole's death spread far beyond the walls of Monarch Ridge Apartments. It wasn't just the loss of a young mother, it was the realization of a community's worst fears. Parents clutched their children tighter, neighbors questioned their own safety, and for Asia's family, the grief was unimaginable. A daughter left without a mother, siblings left without a sister, and a community left to mourn the senseless loss of a vibrant life. Candlelit vigils sprang up across Birmingham, with residents gathering to honor Asia's memory. Her daughter's pre-kindergarten class planted a memorial garden, a small but powerful gesture to ensure Asia's legacy would live on. But behind the scenes, the wheels of justice had begun to turn. Law enforcement worked tirelessly to piece together what had happened that night. Birmingham's police department launched an extensive investigation, quickly recognizing the complexity of the crime. This wasn't just a random act of violence, it was a coordinated attack involving multiple individuals. Within hours, officers identified and arrested key suspects, including Jania Hendricks, Justin Hendricks, Taylor McLeod, and Aquaria Woods. Each of them faced serious charges, ranging from murder to weapons violations. The swift arrests provided some measure of relief to a community desperate for answers. But solving the case required more than just traditional methods. The investigation leaned heavily on digital evidence. Social media posts, private messages, and GPS data painted a detailed picture of the events leading up to the shooting. What these digital breadcrumbs revealed was chilling. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was premeditated. Detectives uncovered a digital trail that exposed not only the suspects' actions, but also their intent. Private group messages revealed how the confrontation was planned in advance, with individuals coordinating their movements around the apartment complex. Social media posts from the hours before the shooting hinted at escalating tensions, with veiled threats that, in hindsight, left little doubt about what was coming. Forensic analysis of the suspects' phones provided GPS data that placed them at the scene, leaving little room for denial. This reliance on technology played a dual role. On one hand, it allowed investigators to piece together a timeline with unprecedented accuracy. On the other hand, it highlighted the dark side of social media and digital communication. What was once a platform for connection had become a weapon, a tool for inciting violence and amplifying conflict. In the days following the arrests, the case moved swiftly through Birmingham's judicial system. Prosecutors presented a strong case, built on a foundation of physical evidence, eyewitness testimony, and the damning digital trail. But even as justice began to take shape, the community wrestled with deeper questions. How had this conflict been allowed to escalate to such deadly proportions? Could anything have been done to prevent it? And what role does technology play in both solving and escalating crimes like Aisha's death? Was more than just a loss. It was a wake-up call, a reminder of how quickly tensions can escalate when left unchecked, and how deeply communities can be affected by violence. It sparked conversations about the importance of conflict resolution, the role of social media in our lives, and the urgent need for safer neighborhoods. But the investigation brought some clarity to the events of that night. It couldn't erase the pain. For those who loved Asia, the question wasn't just how this happened, but why. Why was a young mother caught in the crossfire of a dispute she tried so hard to avoid? And what can be done to ensure that no other family endures such a devastating loss? Technology played a pivotal role in both the escalation and resolution of this case. What role do you think digital tools should have in preventing tragedies like this? Can digital evidence always be trusted? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's explore how we can use technology responsibly to build safer communities. The story of Aisha Alice Poole is more than a tragedy. It's a mirror, reflecting the cracks in our society and the urgent need for change. Her life, full of love and hope for her daughter's future, was abruptly cut short, leaving us to confront the hard questions. How could this have been prevented? What role did social media, community systems, and bystanders play in her death? And how can we ensure that no other family has to endure this kind of loss? Aisha's story reminds us of how quickly life can change, how a moment of tension can spiral into irreversible consequences. But amidst the grief, her story also carries lessons. Lessons about resilience, the need for community support, and the importance of stepping in before it's too late. Aisha's community hasn't forgotten her. In the wake of her death, her daughter's school planted a memorial garden, a quiet space where her memory can live on, and her daughter can find solace in knowing that her mother's legacy will not be forgotten. The trust fund established for her daughter's education is another symbol of hope, a collective effort to give her the future that Aisha worked so hard to secure. But the community's healing efforts extend beyond memorials. Aisha's story has inspired real change. Residents of Monarch Ridge Apartments have come together, demanding better safety measures and advocating for systemic improvements. Conflict resolution programs are being introduced, teaching young people how to de-escalate tensions and resolve disputes without violence. And in the broader Birmingham community, Aisha's story has sparked critical conversations about the dangers of social media-fueled conflicts. The story is also a call to action. It challenges us to take a hard look at the systems and behaviors that allow such tragedies to happen. Social media platforms, designed to connect us, have become battlegrounds for conflicts that escalate far beyond the screen. Asia's death forces us to ask, what can we do as digital witnesses to prevent such outcomes? How do we respond when we see tensions rise online? Do we intervene, or do we scroll past, unaware of the real-life consequences unfolding just out of view? But the lessons go beyond social media. Asia's story highlights the critical importance of safe communities. It reminds us of the failures that leave families vulnerable, like disconnected security cameras, poorly lit streets, and inadequate responses to residents' concerns. These systemic issues demand our attention, not just in Monarch Ridge apartments, but in communities across the country, like humanities around the country. Her death is a stark reminder that every moment of inaction has consequences. When we ignore the warning signs, when we fail to address the cracks in our systems, we allow tragedies like this to happen. But Asia's story also shows us the power of collective action. Her community has rallied together, not just to mourn her loss, but to ensure that her death is not in vain. Asia Alasepool's story is a reminder that we all have a role to play, whether it's speaking out when we see injustice, supporting families in need, or holding our leaders accountable. Every action matters. Her death calls on us to be better neighbors, better leaders, and better digital citizens. It challenges us to create communities where safety is not a privilege but a right, where mothers like Asia can raise their children without fear. The legacy of Asia's life is one of love, resilience, and a determination to create a better future. Her story serves as a reminder of how fragile life can be, and how important it is to protect and nurture the communities we call home. Asia's story challenges us to reflect on our own roles in preventing tragedies and supporting families in need. What lessons do you take away from her story? How can we work together to build safer, stronger communities? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Together, we can honor her legacy by making the changes we wish to see. Asia Alasepool was so much more than a statistic or a headline. She was a mother devoted to her daughter's future, a friend who lifted others with her smile, and a dreamer who refused to let life's challenges extinguish her hope. Her life, though tragically cut short, leaves behind a legacy of love, resilience, and the urgent need for change. The story is a powerful reminder of the world we live in and the world we must strive to create. It speaks to the dangers of unchecked tensions, the responsibilities we carry as digital witnesses, and the changes we need to make to ensure that no family, no community endures a loss like this again. Asia's story has moved you. Let it be a spark for action. Share this video with your community to start conversations about conflict resolution, social media responsibility, and community safety. Let her legacy inspire us to be better, to speak out, to intervene, and to support one another in building a safer, kinder world. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that matter, and join us in working toward a future where tragedies like this are a thing of the past. Together, we can honor Asia's memory by turning heartbreak into hope and action.